Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa. Fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday. Thanksgiving is 2 days away, which is something to be thankful for. A trio of games on Thursday. But first, we're going to look back at the weekend that was. And as always, that means a check-in with the Fantasy Football Roundtable League. And Dennis, Chubb's broken wheel continues to just trudge along. I'm at 9-2, feeling pretty good. But your wife won 4 straight, now 7-4, sitting as the 3 seed. She's got to be pumped.
She's on a heater, and I can't tell you, I spent 3 straight days listening to how bad I was getting my ass kicked by her. So,
well, that's a little bit of the downside. You're hanging in there. You're part of that pack of teams that's now at 5-6. You're just a few points behind Matt for that 6th playoff spot. You guys just got to dig down deep and go on like a Broncos run of your own here.
I do. I feel like if I just got to get in, then I can wreak havoc in the playoffs. Just need to get Justin Jefferson back, and unfortunately, I feel like it's going to be 2 weeks before I get Justin Jefferson back. So,
switching gears a little bit, we're starting the playoffs for Scott Fishbowl. I know you, like me, were in. I finished 12-10 in the regular season and got in for the playoffs. How are you sitting?
So what is that? The Scott Fishbowl?
Yeah,
never heard of it. I had a miserable season.
I was going to say, I was pretty sure you got in.
That Aaron Rodgers, Jonathan Taylor stack, didn't do good for me. Josh Jacobs, slow start. No, I mean, I haven't checked. I looked over the weekend and I was in 2,176th place. And so I'm pretty sure that even if I had gotten 2 victories this weekend, I don't think I would have made the playoffs. So I'm out.
I'm at 928. So not incredible, but
you're only 1,200 spots ahead of me.
Yeah, not incredible, but alive. Well, let's talk about some other games where we saw some performances that maybe were not incredible, but the teams are alive. But the first one was a huge game. The Cleveland Browns hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. First game for Dorian Thompson-Robinson at start, and he got the victory 13-10. For the Browns over the Steelers. Dennis, today it came out the Steelers have finally relieved Matt Canada of his duties. It was a miserable game for Kenny Pickett and the passing offense. Aside from Jaylen Warren, there wasn't really much to feel good about with the Steelers offense. Do you see better things for them now that they've made this change?
What? Who took over? Who's taken over? Have they announced? Is it the QB coach? Who's got that?
I don't know.
I haven't even looked at their staff. I saw the news blurb today that Canada was canned, and I'm like, oh, great. Now there's 2 camps emerging, the pro-Byron Leftwich camp and the anti-Byron Leftwich camp. I got to be honest, Leftwich was super hot.
Running back coach Eddie Faulkner will take over offensive coordinator duties, but quarterback coach Mike Sullivan will take a bulk of the play calling duties. So now instead of 1, they have 2.
So it's, I don't know what really to expect. Both of those guys are relative unknown, so they haven't been hot names over the last couple years. and whether that's because Canada was blocking them or what, who knows. We'll find out here over the next couple of weeks if Pickett all of a sudden starts to catch fire. I know that Deontay Johnson had
Or
to be
Najee
picked
Harris.
up by Broderick Jones and removed from a heated discussion with a coach on the sideline last weekend.
Yeah, $10 says it was Matt Canada.
Yeah. I'm just curious, Mike Tomlin typically gets his team rallied, and now this is something that for them to rally around. I don't know that making a change.
And this is the second major contender kind of in that AFC playoff picture in the last couple of weeks that had booted an offensive coordinator, because Buffalo did the same thing.
Yeah, it's that it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well at all.
Well, it can't be any worse if you're rostering Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, or Pat Freiermuth, because those guys fundamentally haven't existed a lot for fantasy the last few weeks. I mean, Deontay had one good game. Najee's had a couple of okay games, but considering what we've seen them do in the past, probably need a change.
It's going to come down to, can Pickett start to generate offense through the air? If the quarterback's coach can scheme open receivers for easy enough throws for Pickett to make, and the offensive line can hold up, then maybe they do catch fire. What's the rest of their schedule look like? I haven't even let me get it here. So they've got the Bengals, who've been, decimated by the loss of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, it comes at a good time because they get Jake Browning.
Yeah. Arizona Cardinals, the Patriots at home. Then they're at Indianapolis, at home versus the Bengals again. They close out at Seattle and at Baltimore. It feels like a 3-4 stretch to close the season, to be honest.
I don't know. The first ones you ticked off seemed winnable to me. 4 wins, and they're at 10. 10's usually kind of a magic number to be right in and around the playoff picture. I could see them beating the Bengals twice, but at least once. Patriots are very beatable. Indianapolis, I think, is beatable. And Arizona, I also think, is beatable. So, I mean, if you split with the Bengals and you beat the other 3, Ravens, you're probably not winning that rematch.
Oh, no.
And Seattle could go either way, though. Seattle is the most mercurial, as we will talk about later, of mercurial teams. On the flip side for the Browns, though, they're looking pretty good still. 7-3. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 24-43, 165 yards, no touchdowns, and interception. Not lighting the world on fire. He is going to start again Sunday in Denver. What did you think of him?
So it was a terribly inefficient game. Only 165 yards passing on 43 attempts, 24 completions. The Steelers were giving up 111 yards rushing and 4.5 yards per carry coming into the game, and the Browns managed 2.8 yards on just 24 carries to running backs. Oh, excuse me, make that 25. Pierre Strong had 1 carry for 1 yard, which would bring that down.
That's strong. That's very strong.
So in a game that the Browns should have been able to run the ball, they threw it 43 times for just 165 yards with a rookie quarterback. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm glad they won. They're winning in spite of the offense, it seems.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do this week. That defense doing some good work.
Njoku had 15 targets and only caught 7 for 56 yards.
It could be worse.
It's crazy.
Next up, the Detroit Lions hosted the Chicago Bears and got a 31-26 victory. They did not make it easy for the Bears. Justin Fields, he ran for 104 yards, looked pretty good. But I want to talk to you about the backfield. Khalil Herbert came back, and we wondered how that backfield mix was going to go. Well, it turns out they're using 3 running backs. Herbert had 16 for 35, which is not incredible. 6 for 30 for Roshan Johnson. Khalil Herbert was also the only one to get a reception, had 2 for 6. And 6 carries for 14 yards for Deonta Foreman, but he did get the touchdown. Dennis, what do you make of this rotation?
So it seems like they liked Foreman to start, and then he got injured. And the move was then immediately go to Khalil Herbert as the one. Herbert played 43% of the snaps. He outsnapped Johnson 32-25. I feel like it would have probably been Johnson and or not Johnson, Foreman leading the team in snaps and Herbert second, and they probably would have been pretty close together. If I had to guess, if Foreman had not gotten hurt, you'd have probably seen something like 45-40-15 as the breakdown for snaps. But that they didn't throw the ball to the running backs except for twice was puzzling. I know that Justin Fields is good with running the ball. He's got a good arm, but he only threw it 23 times. He got it to DJ Moore, and honestly, I think we only expect one receiver to be productive for fantasy. So 7 for 96 for one for DJ Moore, who's the one there. I think we'll take it. The running backs are problematic because they ended up with the injury. It just didn't work out the way that they had hoped, that we had hoped as fantasy managers.
Detroit, meanwhile, a pretty tough game for Jared Goff, probably one of his worst of the season, but they managed to rally and get the victory, 17 fourth quarter points to get that win. So I want to talk about Jameson Williams. 3 targets, caught 2 for 44 and a touchdown. He was a big draft pick a couple of years ago. Still not seeing a ton of production. What do you make of Williams?
So I like what Williams brings to the table in the scheme of the offense. He is the deep threat. He only had an 8.6% target share, but he played 65% of the snaps. So he is out there. And in this game where Goff threw the ball 35 times, and really it wasn't the best game for Goff. He had 3 interceptions. Amon-Ra had 8 for 77 and a touchdown. Williams had the touchdown. I think he's going to continue to progress. Josh Reynolds is kind of the intermediate guy. Donovan Peoples-Jones is working his way into that intermediate guy. Amon-Ra is the guy that's going to get the volume there. And then they throw the ball a decent amount to the running backs as well. So we're gonna need Williams to feel comfortable starting him as a flex. You're gonna need him to hit these big plays consistently for a while. I think once he gets up to where he's the number 2 wide receiver, then I think you'll feel pretty comfortable that he can get 5 or 6 targets a game. Right now, the targets, it's heavily weighted to Amon-Ra and Laporta and Gibbs. And so he's fighting his way up the hill there.
All right. In the next game, Los Angeles Chargers went to Green Bay and got the 23-20 loss. Dennis, Brandon Staley snapped a little bit at the media, seemed a little chippy with anyone questioning him. 4-6 now for the Chargers. They're in last place in their division. They're fading from the AFC playoff picture. Is this going to be the end for Staley?
They've given up the 9th most points through 10 weeks. The defense has scored on, and it looks like Joey Bosa is going to be gone for the rest of the year now too. So you're losing one of your top pass rushers. It feels like Staley's seat is getting pretty hot. The hard thing is that the boost we expected from Kellen Moore taking over the offense hasn't been as big as we had hoped. We thought that there was going to be like this offensive explosion with all of these weapons. I saw somebody comment on Twitter the other day that Austin Eckler looks like a fullback out there the way he's running. Keenan Allen is still super productive. but he's kind of a one-man show. I mean, Donald Parham was second in targets on the team with 6, tied with Quentin Johnston, Quentin Johnston.
Huge drops. Well, and that's, you got to wonder a little bit. Mike Williams was a big player, but I almost think the loss of Palmer is bigger because he was a pretty sure-handed, reliable target the last few years, and they just are not getting that with.
And they got Jalen Guyton back to fulfill that big play role, and then he immediately went back out injured. So we're stuck.
Hey, at least you were right about Stone Smart.
1 for 51.
It was a good one. For the Packers, Aaron Jones injured his knee again, probably not going to play on the Thursday game. But what are we feeling for Aaron Jones anyway? He just does not seem to have much pop when he's been in there this year.
And it seems like Father Time is catching up. And, he eventually gets us all. Trust me, I've been feeling it for a couple of years. He flashes when he's right, man. He's still super productive, but I think what sort of hampers him a little bit is the long stretches of ineffectiveness from Jordan Love. When Love is in that 55% completion rate range, where he's been 55, 58, 59 most of the games this year, that kind of puts pressure on the running game because they know that they can kind of creep up a little more on defense. Dillon he's not super efficient. He isn't a guy with a lot of wiggle. And so he needs everything to go right for him to be productive in the running game. So it's going to be really interesting if Jones misses more than 1 or 2 games. Are we going to finally get the frozen tundra AJ Dillon that we're all hoping for the last 2 years? It just has never materialized, except for the occasional game here or there. I don't know. I think Jones is kind of moving into that satellite back role, part-time player, because it just seems like he gets hurt too frequently anymore.
Well, and when he's been out there, it just hasn't been great, and they keep having to put him on the snap count. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins hosted the Las Vegas Raiders, got a 20-13 victory. This was a 13-14 game at the half, so not a lot of second half action going on in this one. First loss under Antonio Pierce for the Raiders. They slide to 5-6. Aiden O'Connell, 24-41, 271 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions. Had a couple softer matchups to start his tenure. Had some struggles here in Miami. What do you make of O'Connell?
I don't know that he's a world beater. By and large, he's making okay decisions. He's getting the ball to the people he's supposed to. Adams, 13 targets. Myers, Mayer, Renfro, all 5. I'm not sure about the 7 targets to Trey Tucker. Now, Tucker was, he only caught 2 of them, but he threw it 7 times. And we've seen Tucker put up some, that Jameson Williams type of deep shot stuff. I thought, I got to be honest, when Tucker was drafted, I'm like, oh, he's a special teamer, kick returner, punt returner. And, they keep trying to stick him in the lineup. But to throw the ball to him 7 times seems absurd, if I'm being honest. But O'Connell's going out there and he's battling. He's got moxie. Is he going to be a top 12 quarterback for fantasy? Probably not. Could he show himself to be a bridge type quarterback where whoever comes in and officially takes over the Raiders decides, hey, let's just stick with this young guy for a season or 2 while we build everything else up, and then we'll go get the stud quarterback, which is what teams should do. Maybe they go that route and he plays reasonably well and becomes, one of the career backup guys.
Yeah, I mean, he's been better than I thought. He hasn't been worse than Jimmy G, so that's an unfortunate expense for the Raiders.
I don't feel great having to start him in a couple spots, but
I know.
I feel, honestly, I think I feel better starting O'Connell than I do Desmond Ritter.
I know, and Ritter coming back. We'll
Yeah.
see. For Miami, Devin Achan was back for a couple of plays, but got injured again. Still kind of waiting on a status there. But the interesting thing to me too was with Achan back, he, Mostert and Salvon Ahmed were the active backs. Jeff Wilson was the one that was inactive. Is he kind of becoming the odd man out?
You would have thought so until the Dolphins put Ahmed on IR today. So Jeff Wilson's back, baby. Mostert and Wilson.
I didn't even see Ahmed get hurt in the game.
I know, it's crazy. So
they just take turns going on IR. So I noticed they didn't put Achan on IR, and hopefully that means he's not going to be gone long.
Well, and there was some talk that when he was out this last stint, that they thought that he could have, he felt like he could have played, but they kind of put him on IR to keep him out. But we'll see where this goes. I think with Achan, he is proving your previous bias, whatever that was. If your bias was, hey, little guys get injured and they can't stay on the field, you're going, look, see? And if your bias was injuries are fluky and the guy's just too explosive when he's out there, you're going, well, wait till he gets out there. He's going to show you injuries are fluky. Even big guys get injured, and you can cite all sorts of big athletes that get injured and miss time. So I do think that it probably, looking at how McDaniel has used his running backs over the last couple seasons, he's got a lot of interchangeable backs. And I think mostly he's like, whichever 2 or 3 are the healthiest are going to be the guys on any given week. And, we'll put them out there and we'll see who gets firing it up. And as long as you're being productive out there, we'll keep rolling you out there.
Next up, in one of the more surprising games, the New York Giants traveled to Washington, got the 31-19 victory over the Commanders. Dennis, Tommy DeVito, we've seen him go from just a train wreck of a performance the first time he got thrown in there to 18-26, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in getting a victory. Is he getting better? Do you think he should remain the starter for the balance of the season, or should they go back to Tyrod when he's healthy?
Well, based on this game, I think he should remain the starter. So, but it was against a Washington defense that just traded away their 2 best pass rushers, which seems to tell you, oh, hey, we're kind of cashing it in for the year. We're going to play it out and just see where it goes. Let's see, he had just under 20 fantasy points this week. DeVito's gotten better each week. I think you temper your expectations. I don't know that I'm going to expect him to put up, 240 and 3 next week. But we said these same things about Brock Purdy too, and so maybe he comes in there and he's the next late round darling that earns himself an opportunity. He made Darius Slayton productive. Got the ball to Barkley on passes. Barkley scored 2 passing touchdowns, 57 yards, 3 of 3 for Daniel Bellinger. Heck, Robinson caught 3 of 4 targets. If he can stay consistent and just make good decisions, the challenge is going to be the offensive line. When they go against a team with a great pass rush, I think it's going to be problematic for them.
Meanwhile, Washington falls to 4-7. Another coach on the hottest of hot seats is Ron Rivera. What do you make of Washington and Rivera's chances of staying on another year?
Who saw 3-down back Brian Robinson coming? That's crazy.
Well, Antonio Gibson was out injured.
Right. But even before that, last week or the week before, Robinson had 6 or 7 catches. It feels like Rivera is going to be given the opportunity to take on an executive role that doesn't have a lot of power. He isn't going to be the guy making the player decision. He's going to be a guy in the front office that offers assistance. He's going to be, he isn't going to be the assistant general manager. He's going to be the assistant to the general manager kind of approach.
The Dwight Schrute of
right. But it feels like they're gonna move on from him. The way they kind of move parts off of the defense. Sam Howell, I like Howell a lot, but if he can't avoid taking the sacks, it's going to be a long season. I feel like we're going to see Rivera play out the season, but that they're going to make a change.
Next up, the Dallas Cowboys traveled to play the Carolina Panthers, got the breezy 33-10 victory. Dennis, Dallas now 7-3 on the season. Tony Pollard got back in the end zone, which has to make us feel a little bit better. How far do you think the Cowboys can go?
So Dak is QB6. I don't know that he's been playing super efficient. He had just a 5 yards per attempt this week, and his career's 8.1. They're going to go as far as Dak can carry them because despite Pollard having a good game, he still only had 12 carries. They don't trust him to carry the load. They're one of the heaviest passing teams in the league when it comes to pass run ratio. So it's going to come down to, can Dak carry the team? CeeDee Lamb had 9 targets, only caught 6 for 38 yards and a touchdown. Dak, on 25 completions, threw for under 190 yards. I know they won by 23 points against the Panthers, but this game doesn't tell me a whole lot about Dallas.
Now 7 sacks and another Deron Bland touchdown kind of tells you more. For the Panthers, they can't block. They can't do a whole ton.
Can't run. They can't
Frank Reich is apparently already on the hot seat after only 10 games. What does this Panthers team need? They don't have a first-round pick in 2024. Their best player is 95-year-old Adam Thielen. Seems like a problem.
So what they need is a time machine and go back and draft a different quarterback or stay put and don't move up to get a quarterback. They have the second most pass attempts and the 7th fewest passing yards. So it's the passing game isn't being really productive. They have the second lowest yards per attempt and the second lowest yards per play in the league. Even when they're successful, they're one of the least successful teams at being successful, which it makes it hard. They're committing the 7th most penalties on offense. So they're getting just a few, not getting very many yards, or they're setting themselves back 5 or 10 yards. I mean, Bryce Young is QB 26, Chuba Hubbard is RB 32. At least Adam Thielen is wide receiver 10, so he's pretty good for fantasy.
That's what I said. He's their best player.
And Hayden Hurst, who we thought would be the safety blanket guy, is tight end 31. So Miles Sanders is, I don't know, I think he was RB 34 or something.
Well, he and Chuba were, it was basically a 50-50 split.
Or no, he's actually not. I think he's like 44. He's significantly behind Chuba right now because while they were splitting touches, Chuba was significantly more productive. They need everything. They're not a good team. So probably if you're a Panthers fan and a Panthers front office, you have to, if I'm Frank Reich, I got to figure out a way to sell patience and show growth. Like, what can I do? Whether it's a couple plays each game where they get something right and make a big play, whether it's keeping the game within a single score, only losing by 7, things like that. They've got to start to show whatever side of the ball it is. It's easy for us to go, oh, we want points because we want fantasy goodness. At RB32, Chuba's flex worthy. Adam Thielen he's a starter on most fantasy teams. But outside of that, for fantasy, you don't get a whole heck of a lot. I hate to say, maybe play Andy Dalton, because the one game he played, they were fairly good on offense. But Jonathan Mingo needs to step up. DJ Chark needs to stay healthy. Miles Davis needs to get his head out of his ass and run better.
Miles Davis,
Miles
Davis, he is running like Miles Davis.
He is.
I mean, I think you're right. It almost, when you pay that much to move up for a draft pick, if it's not a complete home run, this is what it looks like. I mean, this is what we would be saying about the 49ers if they didn't have a better core and hadn't had Jimmy G and then Brock Purdy, because they mortgaged a lot of the future to go get Trey Lance, and that did not work out for them.
I mean, I don't remember that the Cardinals traded up into the position to get Josh Rosen, but this feels like a Josh Rosen team.
Yeah. Big matchup in the AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars get the 34-14 victory over the Titans. Titans are now just 3-7. Another coach, Mike Vrabel, who may not make it another season. But Dennis, how come the Titans can't run the ball?
Because they can't throw the ball, and defenses can just stack the box against the run, because Will Levis, they only trusted him to throw the ball 17 times. Levis seemed like the right decision when he went in that first game.
Levis had 158 passing yards. He also had a pass of 49 yards and a pass of 43 yards, which kind of tells you on the other 11, he was dropping it off like 2 yards from the line of scrimmage.
But if he's not getting any time, he's got it, and he's making the right decision. It's there. When you're behind, it's hard to grind Derrick Henry. And so you're not going to run the ball. You're playing to try to score points. And let's see, Jacksonville scored 1, 2, 3, 4. Jacksonville scored 5 times before Dustin Hopkins kicked a field goal for the Titans. So you're already that far behind.
Touchdown. The Titans only scored touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. DeAndre Hopkins, yep. But they were already behind by 5 scores. They'd given up 5 scores to Jacksonville, not 5 touchdowns, but
yeah,
it was just if you're not moving the ball, their defense, which used to be great against the run, and you could pass on them, now seems to be weak against the run, and better against their numbers against the pass look better, but I think some of the better passing numbers against the Tennessee defense are because teams don't have to throw the ball.
For the Jaguars, Calvin Ridley, 7 for 103 and 2 touchdowns on 9 targets. Are you buying into the Calvin Ridley renaissance?
As long as Zay Jones is healthy, yeah. I mean, it's crazy, but it's like chemistry. When you've got you have these different chemicals and you put them together and you get this reaction. And if you're, maybe I should use a baking analogy instead of a drug making analogy.
It's all right. We'll just start calling you Dennis White.
When you put all these ingredients together, you end up with a delicious cake or loaf of bread. But when you leave the yeast out, or the baking soda out or something, it just falls flat. And it seems like, Zay Jones, he only caught 4 passes for 20 yards, but he provides something that allows Calvin Ridley to be in the Z role instead of the X role. And he's clearly better there. Christian Kirk, he had 6 targets. He only converted 3. But I think that the missing ingredient is Zay Jones. I think that with with all three of those receivers, I think you see more production across the board from all of the receivers. And Jones is probably the one you're least likely to start in fantasy, but he makes the others better.
Next up, the Houston Texans hosted the Arizona Cardinals and got the 21-16 victory. Dennis, we've only seen Marquise Brown catch 3 passes since Kyler Murray came back. Do they just not on the same page?
I think it's just things getting back together. It'll be fine. You know, Trey McBride's getting his. I don't know. Greg Dortch came out of nowhere again. James Conner
he has chemistry with Kyler Murray.
Dortch?
Yeah, because he was at the beginning of the season last year before Murray got hurt. He was a guy that they were getting the ball to a lot.
Yeah, well, Dortch is funny because he's like a director. He's like a handcuff. And right now he's in a situation where Michael Wilson was out, and so he was the third receiver, and he just happened to be the guy that was open, I think, is what happened. I'm not worried about Marquise Brown. Honestly, I think if I can get him as my wide receiver 3 or 4, I'm probably trying to pick up a share in Dynasty.
I don't know. I'm less bullish than you. For the Texans, Devin Singletary, another huge game, 22 carries, 112 yards, and a touchdown, caught 2 passes. He has looked really good in place of Dameon Pierce. Was starting to come on before Pierce went out with the injury. Do you think he should remain the lead back for the Texans?
I think he's going to remain the lead back. I do think when Pierce gets healthy, they're going to give him some of these short yardage goal line opportunities, change of pace opportunities, in part because I don't think that Singletary can hold up. You know, I said it with Kyron Williams, who's getting ready to come back. But I as much as I like how Singletary's playing and as effective as he is, I'd really like him to be more in the 14 or 15 carry range. Now that's going to probably affect, you know, his overall production for fantasy. On the other hand, maybe you just ride him until he breaks and you rack up those fantasy points knowing that you're going to have a game where he breaks down and he's out and he may miss a couple games. Slowick, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, said earlier this season that Singletary style was a better scheme fit than Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
And it's playing out that way.
49ers hosted the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, got the 27-14 victory. Christian McCaffrey got back in the end zone, so we can all rest easy. The long national nightmare of his scoreless streak has ended. For Tampa Bay, Cade Otton, 4 for 49. He's tight end 18 on the season. He's been having some decent games down the stretch here. What do you make of Cade Otton?
So Otton looked good last year when he played, and it was interesting that as good as he looked when who was it? Cam Brate came back. They slid him back in over top of him. I think Otton should have kept the role. He's on pace for 78 targets, 58 catches, 515 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That would have been good for tight end 13 last year. I think he's got 5 of 10 games with 5 or more targets. If he can get over 5 targets consistently, I think he's going to be a low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2. Because they don't have nobody stepped up as the third wide receiver for Tampa. They've got some guys, Raheem Jarrett, Trey Palmer, Devin Tompkins, who will flash, but it seems like, Otton provides that short area role that he's big around the end zone, like Mike Evans. He has a role, and I think if he can get 5 or 6 targets a game, I think you're going to see 3 to 4 catches and 40 to 50 yards.
Another big game for George Kittle, caught 8 passes and a touchdown in his last 3 games, he's been over 20 points. He's only had 1 game in single digits in his last 6. Are you buying the surge for Kittle?
So Kittle is tight end 3 on the season. A lot of it was buoyed by games 5, 6, and 7 where he was over 21 points, including a 36-point game. And that's Kelsey, my bad.
Yeah, not game 6.
Yeah. No,
Kittle had a big week 5, 27.7. Then he had 1.1 in week 6, 13.
Kelsey's line. The last 2 weeks, last 3 games, he's been over 20 points. It seems to be coming at the expense of Deebo Samuel. And, we said all offseason that we felt like this offense could support McCaffrey and then 2 of the 3 other guys in any given week. And I think that, I still stand by that statement. So he's had 3 great weeks. He could come out next week and put up 3 points.
Next up, the Jets travel to play the Bills. Bills got the 32-6 victory. Zach Wilson, 7-15, 81 yards, a touchdown, an interception. Got the hook for Tim Boyle and now has been pulled for the Friday game. Demoted to 3rd string. Do you think this is kind of it for Zach Wilson as starter for the Jets?
So who's 2nd string?
Trevor Siemian.
Oh, okay. I'm like, who is it? Yeah. I got to say, there's some guys I saw in the XFL and USFL that definitely deserved opportunities, like Alex Magoo. He played great. I don't know why they didn't get some shots this year. But I don't think Tim Boyle is the answer. I don't think Zach Wilson is the answer either. And I don't think Trevor Siemian is the answer.
I mean, Tim Boyle wasn't any better. 7-14 for 33 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. So
Boyle was under 50 at 53% completion in 3 of his 4 seasons in college. And the one season he was over, it was only 61.5%. So it isn't like he was some small school guy that put up phenomenal numbers in college, but because he was at a small school, he never really got the respect or opportunity. Boyle just was a mediocre college quarterback is all it was. And
the Jets going to play the Dolphins on Black Friday. It's definitely going to be bleak. Meanwhile, the Bills have been looking for some people to step up. I've liked what I've seen from Dalton Kincaid, but I also like what I've been seeing from Khalil Shakir. Had another good game, 3 for 115 yards and a touchdown. Dennis, what do you make of Shakir?
It seems like Shakir and Gabe Davis are rotating who's going to be good based on what the defense does. If it's a man coverage defense, then Gabe Davis is going to have a good game. If it's a zone coverage defense, then it's Khalil Shakir that's going to have a good game. And, the Jets did a lot of zone defense. Gabe Davis he disappeared. Kincaid has established himself in his role as the tight end now with Dawson Knox on IR. So I think if I'm faced with the decision, am I starting Khalil Shakir or Gabe Davis? Probably 7 out of 10 times I'm going to choose Gabe Davis because I feel like he's the more known commodity. I think he has the higher ceiling in any given week. They both have pretty low floors in any given week. But, we've seen Gabe Davis put up, 80 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't know that we have that kind of ceiling with Khalil Shakir.
I guess you never know. I started Shakir over Davis in the league last week. Worked out. Next up, Seattle Seahawks travel to play the Rams. They're probably glad they don't have to play the Rams again this year because they got another loss. They lost week 1. They lost here 17-16. Dennis, Kenneth Walker appears to have some kind of a major injury now. Zach Charbonnet got a lot more work than him on Sunday as well. 15 for 47, caught 6 for 22. What do you expect from Charbonnet if he's carrying the load?
I don't know if this place is the word, but the Seahawks are gaining confidence in Zach Charbonnet. He's a more well-rounded back. After the Walker injury, DJ Dallas only ended up with a total of 9 snaps. No other running back played any snaps. So they felt very comfortable letting Charbonnet carry the load. Now, it didn't work out that they won. Charbonnet had not a terribly efficient ground game, 15 for 47. But he was effective in the receiving game, catching everything thrown at him. Just didn't get many yards with it. This is Charbonnet's opportunity while Kenneth Walker deals with his oblique muscle. Luckily, I insulated my oblique, so I don't really have to worry about him getting injured behind, this prodigious belly here. But
you have to worry about finding him. Same for me.
But if Charbonnet has a couple good weeks, I think we could see, he had the 3 games leading up to this one, Charbonnet had outsnapped Walker. So they trust him pretty well. They are not afraid to stick him out there in whatever the situation is. I do think Walker is the more explosive back. I think Walker's issue is there are times when, a play is blocked for 4 yards and Walker thinks, if I go outside, I can get 80, and he goes outside and loses 3. He does that a little too often, I think, for Pete Carroll's liking. But when you break off those big runs, I think you get addicted to them. So I like Charbonnet. I like Walker. I think as long as they're there together, it's going to give fantasy managers fits. So while Walker is out, I'm going to happily stick Charbonnet in my lineup.
Meanwhile, the Rams are now 4-6 on the season. NFC not as competitive as the AFC. Cooper Kupp banged up again, but they are getting Kyren Williams back. Can they get back in this playoff race?
They're 1 game out of the playoffs right now?
Yeah, they are at the Cardinals, home for the Browns, at the Ravens, home for the Commanders, home for the Saints, at the Giants, at the 49ers. So Ravens, Browns, 49ers are tough, but I would say the others are winnable at least.
Yeah, it'll come down to, whether or not Matt Stafford can stay healthy. I'm not as concerned about Cooper Kupp because they have his clone in Puka Nacua. So if Kupp is out, they'll just go with Nacua and Tutu Atwell, and maybe they'll remember who Tyler Higbee is. They're getting Kyren Williams back. They showed Darrell Henderson the door today, which it was interesting after Henderson basically led the way for 3 games with Williams out. This week they then just went all Royce Freeman, 17 for 73, which I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Henderson scored the touchdown and got the passing game work, though. What really doesn't make sense is they're not even giving Zach Evans a look.
Yeah. He must have said something about McVay's wife or something. I don't know. It's the Zach Evans thing. Athletically, he profiles really, really nice. And if you are selective, you can put together a college highlight reel of Zach Evans that makes you go, man, this guy's the best player to come along since Jonathan Taylor. But then there's also a whole bunch of games plays where you see, this guy, he doesn't see it well, he's hesitant, whatnot. He doesn't have that quote unquote dog in him because, he was at one school and lost his job to a 3-star recruit. So he went to another one and was handed the job and couldn't hold on to it there. So there's something that's not quite clicking for Zach Evans. Whether or not he gets there, I don't know. Maybe some people transition to the NFL really easily and others don't. And some never fully make the transition. But, Kyren Williams will be back atop the order this week.
Next up, Sunday Night Football. The Vikings came in to battle the Broncos, two teams with the longest winning streaks, and Denver got the 21-20 victory to move back to 5-5. For Minnesota, it was another game without Justin Jefferson. He's getting closer to returning, maybe back against the Bears, maybe back after the bye. What do you think it does to this passing game when he comes back?
Well, we've seen a lot of new quarterbacks start games this season. A lot of 10 rookies started. Even Zach Wilson, for as bad as he was, he understood the mission was to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson. And by and large, he did that. Aiden O'Connell, throw the ball to Devontae Adams. So Justin Jefferson is going to come in, and Josh Dobbs is going to throw him the ball. Yes, they've got Hawkinson. Yes, they have Addison. But Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. I think they'll end up I'm not concerned with the overall production. Will they have enough to be competitive, to maybe go on a winning streak? I don't know, because I don't know if Josh Dobbs is good enough. I think I'm starting to wonder if he's more folk hero. Is he Gardner Minshew? Is that really what he is, as opposed to a guy, Matt Schaub, who can come from being a backup and take over and be a starter quality.
The good thing for Minnesota, they got the Bears at home this week. Then they're at the Raiders, at the Bengals. Both those games, not too bad. Then they home for the Lions, home for the Packers, at the Lions. So 2 games with the Lions, probably not great for them. But the rest are fairly winnable. They're already at 6 wins. I could see them getting to 9 or 10.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not. I just, my concern is that we're going to see games like this one this weekend where, they lose 23-20, or they're losing. They lose the game, 19-17, or those types of things.
Meanwhile, the Broncos continuing to using a 3-man rotation in the backfield. What do you make of that?
I was really disappointed that they did not throw the ball to Javonte Williams more. He's a good pass catcher. He didn't. They only ran it.
Got to stop using Jaleel McLaughlin. His run was pathetic. The passes they were throwing to him, he's getting blown up in the backfield.
Yeah. I mean, they only ran the ball 13 times with running backs, so it was. But they only threw it 35 times, so it wasn't like they had it wasn't like they threw that Russ dropped back and threw the ball 50 times. It was only 35 times. They didn't have a ton of offensive plays. Cortland Sutton came up big. Samaje Perine, if 3 or 4 of those targets could have went to Javonte, that would have been great.
Yeah,
Jaleel McLaughlin, somebody. I would have been, honestly, I'd have been perfectly happy if Samaje Perine had gotten all 5 of those Jaleel McLaughlin targets, even if it meant
Perine looks a lot better as a receiver
for 74.
Yeah. Monday Night Football rematch of the Super Bowl. The Eagles went into Kansas City.
Before we move on, I just want to say on air, man, that was a beautiful catch by Cortland Sutton.
I know. I was so excited. My wife had just fallen asleep, and the cat was like resting in my arm, and I screamed when he caught it. Super Bowl rematch on Monday night. Philadelphia Eagles got the win 21-17. Dennis, it was an ugly game for the Eagles. They did not look good. They did not look in sorts a lot of the game, but they were able to get enough to win. Now 9-1. But how good is this Eagles team?
Look, man, I'll say it every week from a real football perspective. I'll win ugly better than lose pretty every week. So the defense is, the Eagles defense is good. They're real good. The Chiefs defense is playing out of their mind this year. Like Chris Johnson was on a first name basis with Jalen Hurts last night. They were like deep in conversation face to face a lot. they're going to go as far as Jalen Hurts can carry them. They've got a good running game with DeAndre Swift, 12 carries for 76 yards. That's a great average. You know, from a fantasy perspective, I'd like to see him get a few more carries. He caught 3 passes for 31, put up, I think, 19.3 points. For fantasy, yeah, I'll take it. Would I like Jalen Hurts to not keep vulturing touchdowns? Yes, I would like that. But I'm happy that now at least Swift seems to be getting about every third opportunity around the goal line.
Yeah, well, and he took in a longer one, which is good for him too.
Well, the thing that hurt me, so I had a game in a standard league where I was down by, I want to say, gosh, I was down by 5 or 6, and I had Hurts and A.J. Brown going, and my opponent had Patrick Mahomes. And I lost by like 5 points because A.J. Brown and his one catch for 8 yards. That was hurtful.
Yes, it was hurtful. Speaking of hurtful, the Kansas City Chiefs, they led 17-7 at the half. They lost 21-17, did not score a single point in the second half. A lot of miscues. Do they have enough offense?
You know, if MVS catches that pass, would we be having this conversation? It'd be 3 touchdowns and about 225 yards. You know, it'd be a little. It would feel a little bit better. Isaiah Pacheco, man, I love watching the dude run, but they don't give him any opportunities, hardly at all, to catch the ball or
At the goal line.
Or at the goal line. It's like their goal line offense is Travis Kelce. And I get it, it works a lot, but if Pacheco could get, just give me like 4 or 5 red zone carries a game. Let him get down there at the goal line and score once in a while. I think they have the parts. Kadarius Toney, between a couple runs and a couple catches and a couple punt returns, brought some excitement. Rashee Rice looks good, but to only give him 5 targets and give Justin Watson 11 targets, you might as well have given Noah Gray 11 targets if you're going to give Justin Watson. I get that you have the best quarterback in the NFL, and your thought process is he can win the game for us. That's it. That's what they believe. But man, they got to spend this offseason rebuilding that wide receiver core.
Yeah, it's been brutal, and the move to get Mecole Hardman really hasn't done much for them either. Before we get out of here today, there are 3 big games on Thursday for Thanksgiving, in case you weren't aware. First up, 4-6 Green Bay Packers at the 8-2 Detroit Lions. I'm taking the Lions. I'm taking the Lions.
I am taking the Lions too. They score 7 more points per game than the Packers. The Green Bay defense gives up fantasy points to running backs in the ground and on the air. Fire up Jahmyr Gibbs as if you weren't going to. Green Bay holds opponents to about 3 points less than the Detroit defense, but that puts that spread at about 4 points in Detroit's favor, so I'm going Detroit.
Next up, the middle game, we have the Washington Commanders 4-7 at the 7-3 Dallas Cowboys. I'm pretty easily taking the Cowboys here.
I fear for Sam Howell's life this week.
Yeah, no kidding.
Dallas is averaging 3.3 sacks per game, and Washington gives up let's see. And Howell leads the NFL in interceptions, and Dallas is tied for 4th in interceptions. Howell has thrown the ball more than anybody. Dallas is going to pin their ears back, and they're going to feast.
Probably the one decent matchup is the 7-3 49ers at the 6-4 Seahawks. I am going to take the 49ers.
I'm taking the 49ers too. We're going to have to watch Geno's status this week just to make sure he's in. if Drew Lock is in, it could be a bloodbath. But if Geno's in, it's that San Francisco defensive backfield is pretty ball hockey. So they may give those receivers some trouble. And, Geno does sometimes get interception happy. So I do have some concerns there. And Drew Lock definitely gets interception happy if he ends up being the guy. So minus for me.
Yep. So watch out for that. Aaron Jones likely to miss the early game for the Packers, Kenneth Walker, and possibly Geno Smith for the Seahawks at night. So keep an eye on those lineups. Otherwise, Dennis and I will be back early on Friday morning, aiming for 10:30 a.m. Eastern, to look at the rest of the week, including the first ever Black Friday game between the Dolphins and the Jets. Until then, you guys have a wonderful week.
Go Bradley Jaguars.